Weeks after China blocked India's move in the UN for action against Pakistan for the release of 2611 mastermind Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi held discussions on bilateral ties with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Ufa and said their fifth meeting in a year shows the depth of India-China relationship. Now, during this meet, which lasted for around an hour and a half, Prime Minister Modi conveyed India's strong concerns over China's move to block action against Pakistan over Zakir Rahman Lakhvi's release.
Well, I don't know how much more I could give you on the first issue. I mean, I can tell you that the issue was discussed in some detail. Prime Minister made our concerns very clearly on this. I'm sure that the Chinese side was impressed by I would say clarity and directness with which he communicated our concerns.
Let's go across to Anant Krishnan now, India Today's correspondent in Beijing. Morning, Anant. Now, you know, as far as the Indian side is concerned, we have seen that the statement that has been made officially is that India expressed its concerns to China. It will be interesting to know whether China has received those concerns well or not. What are you hearing?
Yes, Ankit, I think it was expected that Modi would forcefully raise this issue after China effectively vetoed the move by placing a technical hold at the UN. But I think it's still far from clear whether Prime Minister Modi raising it will have any impact on Beijing's stance. I can just tell you that just a few minutes ago, Beijing put out its official readout of the Modi-Xi meeting. And I think it's quite interesting that there is no mention of either terrorism or of Lakhvi. So the meeting sort of highlights Beijing's concerns, which is getting India's support on the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, on the boundary issue, but there's no mention of terror. So I think while Prime Minister Modi, of course, had to raise the issue, it's still far from clear whether this is going to have any impact on Beijing's stance.
Okay, that's very interesting. Can you just elaborate a little on that press statement that you're talking about, which has been released, the Chinese version or the Chinese side, as far as this meeting is concerned? Just elaborate on that, because it's very interesting, the fact that there is no mention at all of Lakhvi.
Well, I think essentially what the statement does is it highlights the fact that Xi Jinping conveyed a message to Modi saying that he wanted more support and cooperation from India to sort of prop up the BRICS grouping. And also on the boundary dispute, you know, China was of the view that maintaining peace on the boundary was key to the rest of the relationship. And on the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank and on the economic corridor that China and India are part of, the BCIM corridor, that China wanted to see acceleration in the projects. So these are what China looks at as its priorities. And I think Beijing would be very wary about mentioning terrorism in an official statement, because it would be seen as agreeing to India's demands. And what we've seen in the last few months is a deepening of China's relations with Pakistan. So against that backdrop, I think it's very difficult to see a change in Beijing's stance. And I think Beijing will continue to shield Pakistan from any international pressure on the terror issue.
Okay, Anant, many thanks for joining us there. Anant Krishnan, India Today's correspondent in Beijing, joining us and telling us all the latest. Now, after a thaw in bilateral talks, all eyes are on the likely Modi-Nawaz handshake on Friday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold a separate meeting with Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif in Ufa on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS Summit on Friday. While the details with regard to the time of the meeting are still to be worked out, sources have told India Today that it will be more than a pull-aside meeting. Now, that's diplomatic parlance, and we'll get in more details on that from our correspondent in just a short moment. Now, this will be the first such meeting between the two leaders after India called off the Foreign Secretary's meeting in August last year. All right, let's go across to Smita, who joins us at this moment. We are also joined in by Hamza Amir from Pakistan. Let me come across to you, Smita, first. When we say that this is likely to be more than a pull aside, then for the benefit of our viewers, first, if you could explain this diplomatic parlance, what more are we likely to expect from this particular meeting? And also, last year in August, when we saw, Smita, that this cooperation or talks were cancelled in the light of the meeting with separatists. What really has changed on the ground that has forced a rethink as far as India is concerned on these meetings?
Well, Sanket, the harsh truth about India-Pakistan relations, which I've been sort of following for more than a decade now, is that the more things change, the more they remain the same, really. So, it's just a sense of deja vu every time there is a summit-level meeting or a meeting between the two heads of states along the sidelines of some other multilateral summit. Now, just for the viewers, let me explain that when you talk about a pull-aside is essentially, say, last year in, of course, September, or rather later than September, when the SARC summit was held in Kathmandu. Of course, Nawaz Sharif and Narendra Modi were present there. What could have been a pull-aside was when these leaders went into retreat, they just sort of step out of the room, do a quick chit-chat of 5 minutes, essentially exchanging courtesies or pleasantries, a warm handshake or a greeting at best. But what we are expecting in this meeting, along the sidelines, of course, of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where both countries, remember, as of now have observer status, and which is going to be expanded into a full membership. That's the announcement that is likely tomorrow. But that's in Ufa in Moscow, is that it's going to be a proper sit-down meeting between both the sides. So it's going to be a bilateral engagement, an official engagement between the two sides. And also, Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar really called up his Pakistani counterpart, Aizaz Chaudhry, seeking this meeting. So we are expecting perhaps Narendra Modi to try and look for possible ways. The atmospherics really hasn't changed. The situation on the border still remains volatile, fragile, though Narendra Modi did make that call, of course, when he wished, Sheikh Hasina, Ashraf Ghani, as well as Nawaz Sharif a few days back on the auspicious occasion at the start of Ramzan, and also announcing those release of prisoners. So he was working into those atmospherics, but let's not forget that there is also the third angle of the American interest in this entire area here, Sanket.
Absolutely. And Smita, it goes without saying that India is going to express its concerns, the typical concerns that it has with Pakistan in this particular meeting. And that's an absolute given. But Hamza, what I want to know from you is that what really is the Pakistani side looking at from this particular meeting? What are their expectations?
Well, I don't think it is too much of a different viewpoint from Pakistan's side. The only difference that Pakistan is going to do this time, as I've heard and spoken to my sources, that it is going to be a pure agenda set that is going to be given to India with concerns of Pakistan, because Pakistan right now is officially on record talking about the infiltration of RAW and activities of RAW in Pakistan. They're arresting people who they say and claim to be from RAW. They're also talking about the cross-border terrorism and going on, related to the defense, the ex-RAW chief's statement that recently came out. So they are actually jotting down these concerns, as they say, that are going to be handed over to Narendra Modi. And mind you, the meeting that is going to be held tomorrow is not more than 5 minutes. Only about 5 to 6 minutes have been allocated. So it's going to be a very small meeting in which might be an icebreaker. But obviously going forward, it is somewhere around the same lines that, whenever Pakistani bilateral meetings are held, both the sides share their concerns and then they walk their own way, and there's nothing conclusive happening over there. I don't think there's something happening tomorrow as well. All I see is that two premiers are meeting at a time when both the sides are exchanging not only cross-border LOC firing exchanges, but also are sharing very strong statements against each other. So it is going to be a crucial time for both, and we hope that it's going to be an icebreaker.
Okay, so they will meet. This will be more than a pull aside, which is something that leaders do on the sidelines of an event, important event, but it is only going to be for 5 minutes. So they meet after a year, but they meet for 5 minutes, and that perhaps will be very little time perhaps to express all the concerns, and very little time perhaps for Pakistan to receive those concerns as well. But nevertheless, there seems to be some amount of optimism, Smita, isn't it, as far as this particular meeting is concerned? At least talks are happening, whether they are for the sake of it. Very quickly, Smita.
Well, Sanket, I have always been one of the doves that I've always felt that Georgia is better than war. But having said that, I'm right. I guess Hamza is right in putting it that the way, of course, these two countries have not just exchanged, not just the firings on the international boundary or, of course, the LOC. It's also the sharp exchange of words that has happened about allegations of cross-border terrorism. Pakistan, too, upping the ante with those arrests made in Karachi, which they have said that they're supposed, alleged RAW agents who have been trying to infiltrate Pakistan. And I was mentioning, of course, course, you know, that American connect to this. Remember when Barack Obama was here in India on 26th January as the Republic Day chief guest, it was after that that S. Jaishankar was sent off to the Tsar Ki Yatra, really, where he went into Islamabad as well. But having said that, John Kerry, of course, called up Nawaz Sharif. He spoke to Nawaz Sharif, and the very next day, Narendra Modi makes that call to Nawaz Sharif, wishing him on Ramzan. So that cannot be completely, given away. And also, at the end of the day, the bilateral engagement, this might be an engagement, but bilateral talks technically will start only when the secretary level meetings start happening, which we have to wait and watch if it will be announced or not during this high summit level meeting.
Okay. Thanks very much, Smita, as well as Hamza, for joining us this morning. Now, ahead of the big Modi-Nawaz meeting in Russia, intelligence agencies in India have issued a terror alert along the line of control, the international border, in several sensitive states. According to intelligence agencies, terror groups are planning to strike around the time of the Modi-Nawaz meet at Ufa. Alerts for low to medium intensity blasts in multiple cities have also been issued. Terrorists are reportedly looking to target economically and communally sensitive cities. Agencies have also warned of rumor mongering and an attempt to stoke communal discord.